Okay, and we're live. Awesome. Okay, so hello everyone. Hello, Tanissa. Welcome everyone to our first episode session of this Freedom webinar series, where I'll be joined every month by an expert, digital nomad, freedom seeking creature to share their journey of building freedom, building a lifestyle centered around freedom, flexibility, one that doesn't need a break from. Um, just to introduce myself, my name is Caterina. I am the writer behind Freedom Focus, a Substack newsletter where I share my own journey as an expat living in 5 different countries and as a digital nomad living and working from a few more. And also where I share tips and insights about how to build a lifestyle, which I say like it's centered around the 3 F's: freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. So, yeah, today I'm joined by Tanessa Shears. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Tanessa?
Yes, Vanessa, you
Perfect.
got it.
Okay. She's the writer of the Freedom Journey, the Freedom Diaries, sorry, here on Substack. Perhaps you want to introduce yourself briefly and like also your Substack publication.
Yeah, well, my name is Tanessa Shears. I have been an entrepreneur for over 10 years, recently retired, and I'm kind of figuring out what life looks like on this side of it. But my husband and I, we reached financial independence, which basically means your investment, the cash flow we kick off every month, covers our living expenses. So we celebrated that when we hit 33, and my husband retired, but it wasn't until I was 35, which was last summer, that I retired. And so now we're traveling the world part time with our kids. We are on week 11 in the Dominican Republic right now. We did Panama last
Mhm.
year. Bali's up next. So that's kind of what we do is just travel with our kids. And so I decided to document it all and write the story of it. And that's how the Freedom Diaries was born. Is it was when I retired, I was like, what do I like to do for fun? And writing was it. And so no idea it was going to find a community and an audience. And it's been so much fun. But yeah, that's how the Freedom
Yeah.
Diaries was born. The story of how it all happened.
And like, I feel like people are so interested in this topic because I don't know, like when I was reading articles like in your, like from your newsletter to get ready for this interview. And every time like I see exponential growth, I'm like, oh my God, like people are so interested in what you do and like how you achieved freedom. So I would say, let's get into it. Let's dig in.
Let's go.
Yeah, I guess my first question is like if you could like walk us a little bit through your journey, your thinking process, like what were you doing before you started investing as a way, as a lifestyle, as a way of living and working, I guess, as a way to make a living. Yeah, how did you find out about like investing? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, so if we rewind back, let's go back like 6, 7 years. My husband was a full time automotive mechanic, and I was running my own business. I had moved it 80% online, and I was working as a health consultant with 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs. And what I was doing at the time was I was teaching them how to use technology like an Aura Ring to help optimize their focus and their productivity and their energy. And so I helped them use data to make decisions so that their brain worked better in their business. Because my whole thing was your brain is the best asset that you have in your business, so it needs to be optimized before all else. So it was an amazing business. It scaled quite quickly. I had a lot of fun with that. But then in February of 2020, I had my first baby. And I was still like, I loved my business, but it was kind of at this time where we were like getting the antsiness that we wanted to do something more because we were in a 2 bedroom townhouse. It was a great townhouse. Baby had one, but now my office, being an at-home entrepreneur, was in the kitchen. And everyone had to leave the house when I had calls because the baby you could hear crying from everywhere. And so we're like, we need a bigger house. Like we at least need a 3rd bedroom because we want another baby. And so we went out house shopping. I remember looking at these houses and they were like right about $900,000. It's what it costs up here in Vancouver to get a 3 bedroom little house. And we were looking at them,
Because
and I was like,
you're from Canada, right?
yeah,
Like I did. Okay, great.
yeah,
Yeah, just to understand. Yeah.
yeah,
So
based in Vancouver. But we were looking at these houses, and I'm like, if I get this house, we're gonna be like drowning. Like we are gonna be up to our eyeballs in like house and with no cash flow left over. And I was like, what are we going to do? And it was at this point
Mhm.
that we happened to find a YouTube video that talked about this idea of investing not for growth. Like, we all know what it means to invest in an Amazon stock and hope that it grows enough to sell it in the future and retire. But this style of investing, you invest and it gives you cash flow every month that you can reinvest or you can lose
Mhm.
on. And so we started finding this. We're like, this is interesting. And yet we were at this pivot point with our house. Like, what are we going to do? And so
Yeah.
we actually did the math. If we sold our townhouse, we would actually be, if we invested it, we would not only be able to rent a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a really nice neighborhood, but get this,
Mhm.
we would save, or actually would we make an extra $27,600 per year and get into the house.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
so everyone thought we were nuts, of course, but we made the jump and it worked. I mean, the spreadsheets did the math. This wasn't just a winging it, hoping it works. Like, we had
Yeah.
6 months of data, we saw how it worked, we did the spreadsheet math, and it worked. And so that was kind of the beginning. We were in this house, and that was the beginning of like, okay, this is working. Let's see how fast we can build this and how much cash flow we can generate. So that's kind of how the start of the story and how we got into this all.
Wow. So you basically started like educating yourself with YouTube videos. I think at some point, like you guys also attended a workshop or or like, did you guys meet at the Tony Robbins like workshop or like
Yes,
was
we
that,
did.
yeah, like I think that there was a workshop involved. So, yeah, if you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, that was back almost before. That was back before we had kids. My husband and I went to a Tony Robbins workshop, and at the time
Okay.
there was an investor named Phil Town presenting there, and he's really much more about long-term investing, growth
Mhm.
investing. And I remember at that time we were kind of doing that itch for figuring out something more. And it was at that time that I said to my husband, I was like, well, we either have to do rental properties or we invest in the stock market. And he's like, not the stock market.
Mm.
Rental properties feel so much more safe. So actually, we did go and buy our first rental property. We only had about $16,000 each to our name at the time. We
Wow.
pooled it in together, borrowed another 30,000 from my parents, and then we got our first property. And that again is something, after we sold our townhouse, we sold that too and invested all the profit from that, because we were landlords for like 4 years and we had a brand new baby, and it was during COVID times, and had to like drag our baby and all of our stuff out to do interviews for new tenants. People didn't show up, the fridge broke,
Yeah,
everything
for
was getting
sure.
the profit margins were so tiny. You had to deal with tenants. And so when we started seeing
Totally.
how well this investing strategy was working out, we were like, we can make more money with less effort from cash flow investing.
Yeah.
So that was how
That's
we were like, everything went. When that 2021 hit, we sold it all of our property.
Yeah, it was, yeah, pandemic was like brought a lot of transformation for like a lot of people.
Blessing in disguise. I mean, we were
Exactly, a
so
blessing in
thrilled for that.
disguise.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Mm.
And yeah, like well, when I started reading your emails, your newsletters, I was like, what about like all the like unforeseen, like I mean, like the stock market is known to be like to fluctuate. Like,
Yeah.
how do you guys like? Yeah, like how do you deal with that? As both of you are investors, and right now you live off of that. So how do you deal with those aspects, that unpredictability, I guess?
Yeah, it was terrifying at the beginning. I remember we put our first, I don't remember how much it was. We bought a Bank of Montreal stock in Canada way back at the beginning
Yeah,
before we figured out cash flow. And I remember sitting there being like, it went up $3. Oh my gosh, it's down $10. And it was like painful because you're like, I worked for those dollars and they just vanished in one
sure.
day. Like, it was terrifying. And it's interesting, something that happens if you ever heard of like exposure therapy. The more you are exposed to something,
I
the
have a
less.
background in psychology, so yeah, like I exactly know what you're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And we can do that in so many fields, like so many areas of our life. Yeah, so you were doing exposure therapy with like this fluctuation.
yeah. And so you started to see them go up and go down. But there's this crazy rule that we have: if you ever want to make money in the market,
Mhm.
invest the day after us, because every time it goes down, you can't time it. And I think that's the thing, is we have these expectations of like, things are going to go this way or this way, and
Yeah.
then you can't, nobody knows. And so
Mhm.
we actually, when we reinvested our house, and our townhouse money, it was in 2021. And we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know this, but we were like a breath away from like a long recession pullback. And so we actually ended up watching our portfolio drop $130,000 over
Oh
that
my
next year.
goodness.
And that was a lesson, I will tell you. But here's the really neat thing about cash flow investing, like meaning when you invest, you get paid cash flow every month. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to think about this. If you were holding the traditional type of investment where you invest and you hope it goes up and it's up when you need to pull it out when you're 65 years old, right? You are counting on that number being where you need it to be, right? So
Yeah.
everybody experienced that same pullback we did. So let's just say everyone else was down 130,000. They're sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, when is it going to come back up?"
Yeah.
I was sitting there watching it. I was like, cool. And we got $5,000 this month. And guess what? It happened next month. And guess what? It happened the month before. So our portfolio rides the waves with everyone else. The difference is we are getting cash flow every month, which we use to live our life. So I'm not saying, okay, I got to wait till 65, hope it's up, and then I'll retire.
Yeah.
Just every month, it just keeps paying. So like we are in currently right now a market correction, meaning it dropped nearly 10% the market. I got paid. So it doesn't
Yeah.
really affect me the same way anymore. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about cash flow investing is like we look now at market fluctuations as an opportunity to buy things cheap. And I love it. It's just been such a mindset shift. But it was scary at the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah.
For sure. No,
Yeah.
thank you for like yeah, explaining the like I feel
Mm.
like that's perhaps the main obstacle. And even for myself, like I couldn't really understand how you guys were dealing with these aspects and I was like, well, I'm going to ask her like during our interview because
Yeah. Well,
it's scary and
yeah. Well, think about this though. If you have a long enough term horizon, you don't worry. Because if you look back at the history of the market, it always, for the most part, I mean, it has its dips, but it goes up. And so
mhm,
I think sometimes when we're thinking, like, oh my gosh, my money is down, that often tells me there's a short term horizon. Like, if I'm looking
mhm,
at 40 years, I don't care what it does this year. But I
yeah,
do care that I'm getting my cash flow out, right? So I think it's about having that long term horizon and
yeah,
also knowing that when things go on like what's happening with this market correction right now, if you get into that mentality, these dips don't freak you out, but instead Flynn and I were like, Flynn, my husband, I was like, where can we get more money? Like actually that was what we
yeah,
asked. Where can we get more money to invest? Because when things go down, you get paid more on your same thing. It's like
mhm,
buying on sale. Nobody wants to buy things full price. We buy on sale. And I think it's
totally.
just an exposure thing and it wasn't overnight. It was slowly built. But I think it's in really having a long term perspective instead of thinking about what about this year, what about next year.
Yeah. Like pretty much like anything really, like even like building your own business or like I don't know, anything like yeah, I constantly read that like in order to reach some success in every area you should like have at least like a 5 year time span in your mind because I mean yeah, it
You make
takes a
much
long
better decisions when you're making decisions about life in 5 years versus like this
yeah,
year. This year is always guided by emotion.
it
5 years,
that is
10
so
years is
true.
guided by the brain.
Yeah. That is a great point actually. So just to understand, like between like when you guys started investing and like when to like fast forward to when you actually started traveling or when you like decided to sold your property and then yeah started this digital nomad lifestyle, let's say like how many years like yeah, what was the time span? I believe you mentioned it, but I just want to understand it a bit better.
Yeah, so 2020 is the year that we started dabbling in the
Okay.
stock market, but that was buying single stocks, more the
Yes.
growth oriented style that we all know about. We found out about investing for cash flow in March of 2021,
Okay.
sold our house in May 2021, invested it,
Okay. Yes.
sold our rental property in November 2021. So it was really
Okay.
fast action. And then it would have been, we were 33. So I think it would have been, actually, it was on the birth of my second baby that my husband quit his job. So it would have been
Oh
June
my God.
of 2022.
Double celebration. Oh
Yeah,
my
well,
God.
part of it was when I my business I ran from home, right, with my
Yeah.
first daughter. And we
Yeah.
used to have these mornings where we would sit there on just like this, except to be on a WhatsApp call with my husband, and he'd be there fixing tires and working on the car, and we'd be sitting there eating our breakfast at home. And there were
Yeah.
so many moments he missed, like he missed first steps, he missed first words because he was at his job, right?
For
And
sure.
so it was like this fire was lit under us of like,
Mm-hmm.
second baby's coming in June. What do we need to do? How much do we need to be earning in cash flow per month so that he doesn't have to work anymore? I have my
Yeah.
business from home. I'm home.
So
I can
true.
I'm around. So this was really looking at when can we get him home. So in June of 2022, that's when he quit his job. And then we did our first trip, like our long term, like we go for at least a couple of months. That was January 2024. So there
Yeah.
was that period between when he retired and when we started traveling, where we call it just like the boring phase or the accumulation phase, because
Yeah.
all we did was our focus for 2 years was minimize expenses, make as much money as we can, and compound it back in, compound it, keep reinvesting, and it grew so fast during that time because that's our focus, and we just decided it's going to be boring. But then at the
Yeah.
end of it, then I got to quit, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I feel like your story is even more interesting because because of your husband, like you had already like a remote business, so you could travel and work like from anywhere like already. But like your husband had a location based job, and it's yeah, so like I feel like yeah, what you guys created is even more interesting because your different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So, what does your like portfolio looks like today? I saw that you invested on like some specific like Canadian market
Yeah.
stocks, but like yeah, what like how does your portfolio looks like today?
Yeah. So, are you? Do you want to talk like numbers or like what specifically you were investing?
More like, yeah, how do you balance the different, like, do you invest in stock? Do you invest in the, like, other things? Like, yeah, how, like, more the type of investment. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, like, it varies a lot. Like, what you did probably won't be the same, like, won't be the same actions that someone else needs to take for their own goals. But just to have an idea, I think it would be interesting to
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. So the first thing I guess to understand is this concept called an ETF or an exchange trade fund.
Mhm.
So the reason I like these better is because I feel it's a lot more diversified. So when you invest in something like Amazon, you are in one company. So your
Mhm.
success is tied directly at a one-to-one to that company's success. If
Yeah.
something happens to Amazon, something's happening to your portfolio. But an ETF, I like to think of it like as like imagine if I had this cup and this cup was the ETF, and then I put a whole bunch of pens in it. And each pen was a different company. And do you
Yes.
see how, like, what I do is I buy a chunk of this cup. And so it holds all the different companies in it. So if one company happens to go bankrupt, have a bad
Mhm.
earning year,
For
it's okay
sure.
because I'm diversified with all the pens in the cup.
Yes.
And so the first thing we were looking at is like, okay, we want to do buckets of funds that hold different things. Now, you
Mhm.
can get buckets of funds that hold um, different healthcare stocks or different bank stocks, right? And that's
Mhm.
originally how we started out. What we have moved almost entirely towards now is we invest in a type of ETF, but that holds the S&P 500. So the
Okay.
S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the United States, right?
Yes.
Or the Nasdaq, which is mostly focused on tech stocks, or the
Yeah.
TSX, which is Canada's top 60 companies. And so that's how we get our diversification. It's now we are investing in a whole bunch of things at once. We're taking a little slice of all of those. So we're
Mhm.
protected from a diversification standpoint. Then what happens is our the funds that we invest in are not just index funds or ETFs. They have a strategy called covered calls. Now,
Okay.
covered calls is this idea where, like, let's say you wanted to buy my house,
Mhm.
and you're like, I want to buy your house, but I want to look around for a little bit. If I
Okay.
give you $1,000, will you hold it for me while I look around? And in 2 weeks, I'm going to come back and let you know if I want it or not. If
Yeah.
you came back to me in 2 weeks and wanted to buy my house, you would pay the price of the house and I'd get to keep your $1,000. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Alternatively, if you came back to me and you're like, no, the market has dropped, I don't want to pay your price anymore, I'm backing out of the deal, you can back out, I just keep your $1,000. So that $1,000 that I would get to keep is called a covered call premium. And that is how the funds we invest in pay us cash flow every month.
Okay.
So a good example, one that we hold in Canada, this is just a good example, is called USCL.TO. And
Mm-hmm.
what that fund is it's basically it's a fund that holds all top 500 companies in the US, and it
Okay.
writes this type of call on it so that we get paid. I think the return on that one currently right now is 13.9% per year.
Okay.
So we
I
get that
see.
paid out in cash flow
Wow.
so if the fund pays out $3 a year per share you own, we get that out as cash flow, and there's a little bit of growth in the fund too. So that's
I
the
see.
kind of the different ways we're making cash flow now based on that kind of $1,000 I would have received to hold from you.
Yeah.
That's how the money that's given out to the shareholders in the form of um,
I
like kind
see.
of like interest. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
This is super interesting. I didn't like, there were a lot of things you mentioned that I had no idea about. So, actually, yeah, another reason why I was like, this is going to be so informative for
Yeah,
anyone who is not, like
yeah.
super,
Well, it's the
yeah,
same
super.
concept of like of dividends, right? It's like the dividend concept is you buy a share of my company.
Mm-hmm.
I give you a thank you payment every month, or some
Yeah,
funds quarterly to own it, right? And it's you add up enough of those little payments
for
over
sure.
time. First, they start covering off your phone bill. Then they start covering off your car payment. And then they start covering off your rent and your mortgage. And then you're financially independent. When you
Yeah,
no longer have to work, it's optional. And if you chose not to work, your lifestyle is covered. That's
yeah.
financial independence.
I'm actually so glad you mentioned this because while reading your newsletters, I found this definition of financial independence that you just gave. Maybe can you repeat it again? And like, can you tell us if like this definition of financial independence is something within this space or like because yeah, I don't know, I found it very interesting. So basically
Yeah.
you try to cover like all your expenses first. Yeah.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Well, a really good way to think about this is if anybody watching this is super interested in this, Robert Kiyosaki's book Cash Flow Quadrants does a
okay.
beautiful job at explaining this. Because here's how my thinking and most people's thinking works. I make income from a job, from contract work, from wherever, and I use it to then pay off my liabilities, which are things like my mortgage, my car payments. Then I pay for things like expenses, like I go out to eat, I buy clothes, I pay for my Netflix subscription, and that's how money works. What we started to understand is that as long as income is paying for your liabilities and expenses, you are tied to your job. You cannot leave
Absolutely.
because these liabilities, like our house and our car, if we stop working, they get taken away from us. Like the bank will come and be like, "You're not paying it on your house. I'll take that, please."
Totally.
Right? And so the way that we started thinking differently was like, okay, what if we had assets that produced the income to
Hmm.
pay for the liabilities and the expenses? So instead of my income paying for it, the assets, so the assets being the ETFs we're invested in. For some people, assets could be a super passive business that they don't need to have time into. It could be rental properties. What can these assets produce in cash flow that then is my income? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So
Yes, it does.
yeah, so the idea of financial independence is when your assets produce enough cash flow to cover your liabilities and your expenses.
Wow. I will definitely make sure to highlight this like in the summary that I will send afterwards about this live. This is super insightful. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, it's super, super interesting. Um, so yeah, since we were talking about this lifestyle and like, yeah, and you provided a lot of details, what do you think someone who wants to get started in with these, with building these kind of like freedom-centered lifestyle around investing should have? Are there specific traits you like that in your like that you think should would favor like conducting a similar lifestyle? Like, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think honestly, there's no place that you can't start. My husband, when we started
Mm-hmm.
dating, he bought a motorcycle on a line of credit. So he was like, he came from an immigrant family, get
For
the
sure.
good government job, get the pension, stuff like that. Very much like you want to follow this so you can retire and have the benefits. And so
Mhm.
his mindset started as like everything goes on credit card, it's fine. I have retirement. So he came from there and was able to pay off debt and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
think it's not like there's a place that you have to be to start. I think that's the most
Okay.
important thing because he started in debt and I started as a saver, but with no concept of invest. I had no clue. So I
Yeah.
think the first thing like is really deciding like I'm willing to be uncomfortable because when you enter this world, and we feel the very same way. We've been playing in the crypto world for the last year, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like when you enter a place like this, you look at these words and you hear things that I'm saying, like covered calls, ETFs, like
Mm-hmm.
dividends, and your brain's like,
Yeah, it's a lot of keywords that
right.
you might not
And it's so easy for our brains to go, I don't understand it.
to
I'm
shut down.
overwhelmed.
Yes.
I'm confused. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, this is a problem. This means I shouldn't invest. What if instead you're just like, oh, that's normal? Like, this
Mm-hmm.
happens to everyone when we get in here, right? And so I think
Yeah.
the most valuable trait you can have is a willingness to feel uncomfortable. Willingness to watch a video or read a blog post or get a newsletter and read it 4 times until it makes sense. Or
Yeah.
willing to put in $300 just to feel how uncomfortable it is to watch it go up and down and up and down,
Yeah.
and willingness to feel like you're releasing control of something that feels really safe, keeping it in cash, or
Mm-hmm.
willingness to like travel. You sometimes you don't know what the city's going to be like that you booked or the Airbnbs. Like there's so much unknown, and I feel like the rate at which you are going to succeed in this and your growth is how uncomfortable you are willing to be, because the more comfortable you want to be, the less action you're going to take, and the more you're going to tell yourself things like, I don't know enough yet, I need to know more, I'm watching the market, I don't quite get it yet, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that the biggest trait is going to be a willingness to be uncomfortable and know that when it happens, nothing has gone wrong.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I can relate to that so much. I feel like I mean, this trait, if we want to call it like that, like is really required for any any possible
Business?
way we choose to achieve like the next step in our life, to get more freedom, to get more flexibility. Even when, yeah, like even when you want to start, I don't know, looking for remote jobs or start your own business, like you need to be familiar, like you need to become familiar
Yes.
with the unknown and with feeling like you're just a beginner, yeah, and be
Yeah.
willing to learn. So this is like, yeah, very interesting, and I feel like a lot of people who choose yeah, to like become more like have a more flexible lifestyle might relate to this too.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So I'm seeing that we have other like more and more people joining. So I just wanted to tell everyone that we will also have a Q&A space at the end of this call. So if you want to start like writing questions for Tanessa, feel free to write them below in the comment in the chat section, and I will go through them in I would say like 5-10 minutes.
And I'm an
Um,
open book. If you guys are watching this and you have questions, you want to know numbers, you want to know any, like, I'm open book. Like, I'm not taboo about money or anything like that. Like, you want to know failures, you want to know what's been going well, how much we've lost at points, what we've made. Like,
yeah.
I'm an open book because I feel like it's that transparency. Remember I told you there was a YouTube video I found, and all it was just somebody showing their portfolio, and it was like
Mhm.
that transparency let me see what is possible. And so I feel like money is a very weird,
Oh,
uncomfy, taboo kind of topic to talk about, and I think that it makes it makes for a lot of shadiness in the industry almost, or talking about, like, nobody wants to talk about it, and but yet everyone's like, this is, I did it by doing this, but like, how? Show me the back end, show me the details. You can't have won the whole way through. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
so true. And what makes your newsletter so interesting, I feel, is that, like, yeah, you really show the behind the scene. You share like your spreadsheets, the graphs, so, like, it's super informative. So I really appreciate that. And like, I agree, like, especially because Substack is like a social media, at least in my opinion, like, based on being authentic. Like, you're not gonna fool people on here. Like, everyone wants to read like authentic content, and people deserve to read authentic content. So I think, like, yeah, it's super important to be like, to keep it real, like, talk about the failures and successes, and yeah, everything around that. So yeah, actually share like share perhaps like a failure or something you guys, like an uncomfortable situation you guys run into during your journey. I would be, yeah, I think it would be very interesting
yeah, we got a lot of those.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we've launched 2 or 3 Amazon businesses because it's never
Mhm,
the first thing. Like, you always have such expectations that the thing you're doing is going to work.
mm,
But we've launched a private label product on Amazon that
mhm,
landed us $40,000 in debt that we had to pay out, and that, I think we shut that company down. We liquidated it right after we got married, which would have been probably, we probably liquidated in October of 2021. So, like,
mhm.
in the middle of all of this,
Of all this, oh my God, yeah, your 2020, like in the year
it was
2021 was your most eventful, I feel, one.
it was a special year. So, like,
Yeah.
that was a huge, like, oof, that didn't work. Then we tried a different style of Amazon business, which was not drop shipping, but it's called online arbitrage. You basically buy
Ah,
stuff and then sell it for more on Amazon. That didn't work. We couldn't find the right combo. It works for some people. We couldn't get it to work for
mhm.
us.
Why would not, like, why didn't that work? Like, does it require a lot of time, a lot of attention, or like, why didn't that work for you guys?
Yeah, so the first one, what we did was we had a really cool product. We actually use it all the time. It was a they're called silicone. You know, the reusable silicone Ziploc bags.
Yes,
Like,
totally.
we had our own version of that, and they were awesome. We still use them. We put meat in the freezer in them, and all the time they were great. Except
Yes.
what we have learned is that we didn't differentiate enough from the competitors. Like, we had our own and our own
Mhm.
branding and own, but it wasn't something that's like, oh, I need to go back and purchase theirs. They could have purchased something similar that was at a lower price. And so we just
Yeah.
couldn't compete with the companies that had the ad budget.
Understood.
We were a startup, so that one didn't
Yeah.
work. When we tried to do the online arbitrage model, basically what ends up happening is you buy something and then you go and sell it on Amazon, and there's a
Yes.
profit margin of a couple bucks on there. But the problem is again, you get the big fish who've got more money who come in and they undercut you by 50 cents. And it doesn't seem like much until
Mm,
the next guy undercuts by 50%, and the next one, and the next one. And all of a sudden, the profit
okay.
margin is gone, and you spend all your time trying to find products. And so that
Yeah.
was something that didn't work. What is something else that we tried? We decided to start playing with margin. So margin is
Mhm.
a type of investing it's a strategy in which you borrow money at a lower interest rate to
Okay.
invest it as something with a higher interest rate. So let's say I borrowed it and I paid 5%, but I invested in
Yes.
something that pays 10. Theoretically, you get the spread of 5%.
Yes.
Yeah, we did that and didn't know that we were sitting at the top of the downslope into the recession,
Whoa.
and we got eaten alive. We lost like 10 grand in that. But this is my more so my
Yeah.
point in this is, like, all of these failures had to happen for us to get where we are, right?
Yeah.
All of these failures, I, I think they're so normal, but nobody talks about them, and we just see the straight line to the top. But, like,
Mhm.
we've screwed up so many times. We've bought in the wrong funds. We've sold the wrong funds. We've taken losses on things. Like, not everything's a winner. And I think
Totally.
it's that attitude for us. Like, we have a very deep core foundational belief that things always work out for us. Like, that is, they do. And here's the
I
thing, they
love
don't.
that.
You look at things, they don't. But in
Yeah.
the big scheme of things, we take so much action and screw ups, but it has to
Yeah.
work out because of how fast we move. Like
Yeah,
things always work out for us. So when we're sitting there in moments where we're just like, I don't know how we're going to find the money for this, or like, we always go look at each other, we're like, it's okay, because things always work out for us. They do. They
I
just
love
do.
it.
And I think it's because we didn't decide to be scared of failing or quit when the failure happened. We're just like, this just wasn't it. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, it's crazy because I mean, I'm from Italy and like I feel like Italians have such a scarcity mindset. And whereas my husband is American, and like, yeah, the American mentality is all about, yeah, like things will work out, you can do it. Just picture all the logos of like all the American
Yeah.
brands
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
shoes and clothing that we know. Yeah, so it's funny because he repeats like to me like the exact same sentence like at least once a day or
Yeah.
so. Like things will work out because yeah, they always
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So and I like yeah, I truly yeah, I really see the value in like maintaining a positive mindset and keeping learning and adjusting, tweaking things. Yeah, like I mean there is a compound effect in learning as well. So
Yeah.
at first you don't really see progress and then all of a sudden like yeah, like you start seeing it. So yeah, actually, like if you could share a little bit about your mindset and what was like what guided you towards the like making these decisions. Did you want to be a digital nomad, or like did this let's say life decision pop up in your life like randomly? So what were like yeah, what was the philosophy behind your decisions over the past years, and perhaps even before you started building your business, because after all it was also remote.
Yeah, well, the business I originally started in 2014 as a personal trainer, and I opened my own company. I had been a personal trainer since 2008 and had opened my own
Okay.
company in 2014. But in about 20, I say about 2016, I started moving everything online. I had no
Hmm.
idea the term digital nomad. I didn't know any of this. All I needed to know was that I'm pretty relentless and persistent when it comes to things, and I also like speed. And I always found I kept getting like contained wherever I worked, and I
Hmm.
wanted to be contained. And so I started the business in that. But in my husband, of course, he was told get the good job, get the benefits and everything. I didn't know that it existed, and so often, like I think most of us don't know what's possible. And there's a question that we ask ourselves all the time, and it's like, what don't we know that is going to change our life? Because I think we spend a lot of time focusing on all the things we're aware of that we need to change. I think we spend next to no time focusing on all the things we don't even recognize are limitations, or things if we learned, like for us, figuring out that one piece of cash flow investing completely pivoted our entire
So
life, and we didn't even know to look for it. Like it's the things you don't even know to look for are the things that you need to find out. And so we ask that question all the time. We're like, what don't we know right now? Right? Because we're so in our own stories, and for us, everything we think and see are facts, but they're not. They're opinions on circumstances, and we often
wow,
can't see past that limitation. And so we keep looking around at all our current problems and thinking this is what we need to solve, but it's not. It's the things you can't see are the things that you need to solve for. And so we're constantly asking people, like, we have many friends who are very successful in both investing and business and finance, and I always love to ask them, I'm like, what do you see about our life that we can't see right now? Like, what thing are you looking at our life and been like, oh man, if they just like knew this or did this? And we ask that so often, and I think that's why we move so fast, is because we're always willing to figure out what we don't know, because I think those are the biggest limitations.
wow, this is like yeah, like this is very insightful. I never heard about that or like never considered that, but it's so true. There is an entire world of things we don't know that might actually have a huge impact on our life and lifestyle.
Yeah.
And yeah, we should really be open to grasp these
Yeah.
cues like from yeah,
Yeah. Well, this
life
is
and
the good stuff.
experiences.
I was a coach for years. And so it's like when we get to the bottom of everything, like take the topic of money out, take the topic of health out, take the topic of whatever it is, take all these topics out. At the very bottom of it really is all the same issues. It's a willingness to be uncomfortable. It's a willingness to go outside of what, it's a willingness to, it's all that, right? And so that's why I love what's at the bottom of this all the time. But I was going to say, one of the things that I forgot to say that propelled us into being nomads was not even our choice. This beautiful 4-bedroom house that we rented in this lovely neighborhood, the landlord sold the house, and we were like, do we want to just travel now? And that happened literally last September. And so this is very new to us, this whole like being without a home base thing. But that wasn't our choice to do that, but we decided to embrace it because it was gifted to us. So
Yeah.
we give it a
Oh
go.
my God. How has it been so far? How long have you guys been there? And will you go somewhere else afterwards?
Yeah.
How will your, yeah, digital nomad or nomad lifestyle look like
Yeah.
right now?
So we were
Like,
out of our house August 31st. Everything's in a storage locker for now. We did a month on Vancouver Island, came home to family for a bit. We have been in the Dominican Republic since January 8th.
oh my
And
God.
it's been a long
I
time.
didn't realize that you guys had been there for like this long. But yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, I
it's been a
interrupted you.
while. So we leave in 2 weeks. We come home for a bit, spend some time in Vancouver. We're doing 4 months in Bali this fall. Then we're doing 3 months in Costa Rica next winter, and then it'll be 4 months in Spain, and then 3 months in the Philippines. So we've got it mapped. We've got at least 2 years mapped out.
Yeah. Have you already booked accommodations for all
For
these
Bali,
places?
Bali's done. It's in the bag.
Okay. I was like, oh my God, if she has
That's
already like all the flights and accommodations booked for the
That's
next
my
2 years.
friend. Enjoy the trip you're on, Tanessa. Like, I've spent this whole trip planning the next one and the next whole trip plan. I literally have to just tell myself, like, you need to enjoy your trips or there is no point. So I, like, cut myself off. I'm like, no thinking about it. Bali's done. You don't have anything to think about until at least 6 months from now.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that.
Um,
Cool.
yeah.
Um,
We have a
well,
question from Larry here. I'm just looking at the.
oh yeah.
I can read it out and then
Yes, please.
says if you look at the chart of the S&P 500, for example, with dividends reinvested, that is the usual chart one sees, and S&P 500 without dividends reinvested, you consume dividends, the total return is a lot less. You can find charts online, just Google S&P 500 ex dividend versus S&P 500 with dividends. Hence, you insist on living on the dividends, your capital will grow at a very low rate. Have you considered underperforming inflation? Oh, this is such a good question. Thank you. So I'm going to
Yeah.
summarize what he said. He said, aren't you concerned? Because here's the caveat, the type of funds we invest in, which are the covered call ETF funds, if
Mm-hmm.
you were to take dividends out, even if you reinvest dividends, 100%, the funds we are in will not grow as much as if you just put them into an index fund like the S&P 500. So like if we were to do our strategy versus just the S&P 500, 100% in 20 years from now, our strategy will have less money. But here's the difference. In my 30s, I am living on the beach in the Dominican. I am full-time with my kids. I get to write for fun. And so I think we've just decided that we're no longer going to wait for an imagined future to start enjoying our money, which may not even turn out. Like, God forbid, let's hope we're all healthy and we make it to that long.
Mm-hmm.
But like today, I have my husband and I have my kids and we have this opportunity. The worst case, and I think we've talked about this, the worst thing that could happen is we have to go back to work, right? And so, yes, if we are living off of all of the dividends and we reinvest nothing, what Larry was saying is like, will inflation not catch up with you and bite you in the butt? 100% it will. And this is something that Flynn and I have been discussing at length. And so the strategy we are currently employing right now, we literally just crossed this number a couple of days ago. Our projected forecast take home is $8,060 per month in this dividend passive income.
Mm-hmm.
3,800 of that is in an account here in Canada called a tax-free savings account, which means any growth or any income we make is tax-free. The other part is taxable and split between the two of us. So we basically pay zero income tax on this. So that takes that off of the table. The next cool thing that we started to really think about is like, okay, since the TFSA is tax-free growth, we have been reinvesting the $3,800 a month in the tax-free savings account. So that $3,800 is almost half of what we make is compounding. We are living off of the other $4,300 a month. And then if you read through my Freedom Diaries, what you'll see is because the way we invest is so tax efficient and our income tax bracket is so low that we actually get government benefits every month. Like we get, currently we get a Canada Child benefit, which is $1,462 a month that we get.
So good.
And it's completely, because it's all in the tax-free savings account, and then we have a joint account which we split, and this is our income now. And so we don't pay taxes on that. So what we are currently living off of is the part of our investments that is not tax-free and this supplement. So that comes to just over $6,000 a month and completely covers our expenses. We are reinvesting the TFSA, the tax-free savings account, as a hedge against inflation. Furthermore, I think the last way we started to think about that is naturally, like, I have been without work maybe an hour or two a week since last July. I'm actually writing my Freedom Diary. This next one that's coming out is literally on this exact topic, but this idea of like, it's everything I imagined retiring.
Yeah.
I'm still bored. It's just like, it's not that whole big, I ruined the next Freedom Diaries, but it's not like, and it wasn't what I imagined. No, it's everything I imagined. And my spirit wants growth. My spirit, my internal driver is growth. And I just don't have that right now. And so we are starting to build, which you're going to read. If you subscribe over the next couple of weeks, you're going to be reading what we're building to also add income because we can, not because we have to.
Wow,
Great
that's
question.
super
Thank you,
interesting, and I'm super curious. And I think this relates to the second question we received from John Santiago. What is your definition of enough? And do you feel like you've got a long way to go from reaching this?
This is such a good
Very
question. So
interesting. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you about a conversation that changed my life.
Yeah.
I was out. It was a February morning in Vancouver, so I was freezing my butt off. I had my headphones in. I was on a walk, and there was a podcast. I forget what it was, how I found it, but it was from an entrepreneur named Rob Murgatroyd. And he was talking about this idea of when is enough enough. And he said, enough is enough when it erodes the bandwidth for a great quality life. Enough is enough when it erodes the bandwidth for a great quality life. This conversation is so good. I have a podcast that I used to host with my old business. It's called Becoming Limitless. If this concept you love, go listen to episode 100. You will love it. But in this concept, that really started to ring for me, and I was like, what is my bandwidth? What is enough for us, right? And so it's kind of interesting. My bandwidth is I want 90% of my time to be directed how I want it to be directed. Meaning, we are now pressing up against this decision of if we want to make money now, well, I can't be location dependent. It can't be dependent on a time zone because we're going to be in Asia in the fall. It can't be dependent on stable internet because that's not a thing in Asia that you go everywhere and you get stable internet. And it can't be dependent on me being on 8 hours of coaching calls a day. Like that's just, it can't be it.
It would be,
And so enough is for me is like I am willing to pursue something to make money for fun and to help and give back because we love it, but that is my bandwidth. Do you see that? Like I know I could go and make like I could be making six figures really quick if I did coaching again because that's what I did for 10 years and that's so it'd be really easy. But my bandwidth does not allow for that anymore. So my enough is very clearly defined stepping into this. And that was the conversation we had frequently when we started stepping out of all these businesses. Like my one-on-one coaching business was like, well, I can't have 1 hour calls for 8 hours, 4 days a week anymore. I can't do that. So then I was like, well, I switched to a group coaching model. And now with the time zone thing, I keep iterating on my life based on my new bandwidth. And anytime my bandwidth is encroached on, there is no amount of money or anything that would make it enough to sacrifice that. And I will say that this is not applicable for everyone on every stage of the journey. this was not how I made my decisions in my building and accumulation phase. It's how I'm making decisions now. And I think it's important to say that because it's really easy to look at kind of this life I've created and been like, well, of
Yeah.
course you don't have to make money. And you're right. It's a different thing now. And I wasn't in this mindset. But I had this in my mind of like, if I continue to build this business, I will trap myself into a business that now relies on this structure to succeed. And if I
Yes.
want to be remote, and if I want to be if I don't want to be stuck in this contained structure, in this location, in this time zone, I need to
Mm.
start thinking while I'm doing this, how can I iterate to start bridging this gap? It's how I bridged
Yes.
the gap between personal training and online. It wasn't all at once. I bridged it over 3 years. But
Yes.
if you're very clear on what is enough in your life and where your bandwidth lies, you can start making decisions now with that long-term thinking. We talked about brain versus emotion. In 10 years from now, in 5 years from
Yeah.
now, that you bridge to get there. It's not an overnight thing. It's an intention that you make every decision going forward with.
Absolutely. Wow, I could relate to that so much because I feel like I went through a similar process. Like when I first got my job, like, and my job went remote, and then I could travel from Europe. And then I was like, no, I want to travel from the US. I don't want to be bound to Europe only. And then when I could travel, like, I mean, when I could travel also outside Europe, I meant
Yeah.
like also from the US or like in different places. I was like, oh, I also want to be asynchronous because, of course, that makes life so much like better. Like, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. like for like, yeah, like meeting with clients in Europe, etc. So yeah, it's really like a learn, like yeah, like a curve. Like it really follows like a curve, and you keep iterating, you keep understanding what you want on any given time. So I could absolutely relate to this kind of
Yeah.
process.
I think
Uh, yeah.
a good like really good pin to put in all of this, and especially in that enough is enough question there,
Yes.
is I I how's I gonna put this? I think one of the most important things that we need to recognize as humans is that regardless of where you are on your journey, whether you are literally at the beginning and you have just heard something that has made you want to shift just a little bit, or look into a little bit more, or you're on some completely different journey that's unrelated to what we're going through.
Hmm.
And I think one of the most important things to really, really, really realize is that when you get there, it will not feel better than your current life. Because I want you to think about this. You've said you have background in psychology, you've probably gone to school for it, right? Do you remember
Yes.
being in your undergrad? When I graduate and I don't have to study all the time and I get a real big kid job, then it's gonna be great because I'm gonna have money
Yeah.
coming in, right? And then what do? We do? We go and do something else, like we go get a house or we go, and it's like you. Everything always feels like, and then when I get to the next step. And it's going to be so great because
100%.
I will tell you, like, yes, I will say living on the beach is lovely for the mental health aspect of it, but I'm still anxious. I still have nights where I wake up crying in the middle of the night and be like, what did we do? I miss my home. There's nowhere for my
Absolutely.
toiletries. I've worn the same pair of shorts 3 days in a row. Like, you know, or like the things like money struggles. Like it doesn't disappear
Absolutely.
just because we're making money. Like we also now
So
spend
true.
more on travel, so we are very conscious of money still. And it's like we have this idea of like, if I was making 8 grand a month passively, I wouldn't worry about money. Yeah, but then watch all the lifestyle upgrades that happen with it, and it's our brains will never allow it to be enough if we don't decide. So I think
Yeah.
like there is not better than here.
Yeah.
It's not. And so if you can't enjoy life now, and you can't enjoy the building process, and you can't enjoy the experience of the discomfort you're in, I guarantee you, if you show up to your end goal with the same brain you have now and you don't put in the work to learn how to love your life as it is, you're going to
Yeah.
get to this goal and it's going to feel like crap and nothing like you expected. And so you're just going to go to the next thing to make you feel better. And so if you can enjoy the struggle of like the good old days that you're in right now, when you get there, you can guarantee it's going to be sweet. And I think that that
Yeah.
is the best lesson I've ever learned is the good old days that we're in right now, where it feels hard and struggle and it feels like nothing's
Yeah.
working. These are the If you enjoy these days, I can promise when you get there, it's gonna be amazing.
That is so true. And it reminds me of like a quote from Mark Manson that I don't remember, but the concept behind it was that like living a life without problems is impossible, but you need to choose the problems you want to fight for. Like you
Yeah.
need to understand like the struggles you want in your life. So yeah. Okay, so we are very close to our cutoff time. Is there any other question? No, I don't think so. Well, then I think I don't know. Did you want to say something else before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I know I've seen a whole bunch of new names joining in down below. So if I haven't ever met you before, hi. If you didn't catch the beginning, I'm Tanessa. And I've actually seen a whole bunch of like my family from Instagram on here. So make sure that you guys subscribe to Katerina's Freedom Focus Substack. And if you're new to me, come say, oh, look at my husband's watching. Hi, Flynn.
We talked about you too.
Oh, always with love. But make sure that you're subscribed to both of our Substacks because they're on freedom.
Exactly.
And I think that at the end is the real driver for both of us is finding our
Yeah.
own versions of freedom and they complement each other beautifully. And so nice to meet you. If we
Nice
haven't
to
met.
meet you too. Absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned multiple times, I love how honest and real you keep your newsletters. Like you share the numbers, you share graphs, you share failures. I think that, yeah, what you're doing with your newsletter is really amazing. And I'm so honored that I got to talk to you. This was super fun. And yeah, I will share a recording today or tomorrow with all the subscribers. So like whoever missed this interview will be able to catch up with it
I love it.
whenever
Thank
they
you for
want.
hosting this. This was
So
fun and the first
this
first
was
Substack
so
live for
fun.
me.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day in the DR. I'm pretty jealous. You have an amazing tan. I'm pretty jealous.
Thank you. It's a hard come by, I'll tell you that. Awesome.
Bye.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.